If you're listening to this, I don't think you're here because you wanted another motivational speech. I think you're here because something inside you feels tired. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a good night's sleep. The kind that quietly follows you everywhere. You wake up, and before the day has even begun, your mind already feels heavy. You answer messages. You finish your responsibilities. You smile when someone asks how you're doing. And somewhere along the way, you became so good at saying, "I'm fine," that people stopped asking if you really were. Maybe they never noticed how much you've been carrying. Or maybe you became so used to carrying it that even you forgot how heavy it had become. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you felt completely at peace? Not distracted, not escaping through your phone, not keeping yourself busy, just peaceful. If you can't remember, you're not alone. One of the quietest tragedies of modern life is that many people aren't living anymore. They're surviving, one day at a time, one responsibility after another, one problem after another, until eventually they stop asking, "When will life become beautiful again?" Instead, they ask, "How do I just get through today?" That question breaks my heart, because no one dreams about surviving. Children don't imagine growing up just to make it through another week. Somewhere along the journey, life became heavier than we expected. Dreams became responsibilities. Hope became pressure. Rest became guilt. And somewhere inside all of that, you slowly disappeared. Mental exhaustion doesn't always announce itself with tears. Sometimes, it arrives quietly. You stop looking forward to things you once loved. You laugh less. You notice less. You begin moving through your days, almost automatically. Not because you don't care, but because your heart has been protecting itself for so long that it no longer knows how to relax. People often say, "Be strong," but very few people ever ask, "What has your strength cost you?" Maybe your strength cost you sleep. Maybe it cost you your peace. Maybe it cost you the version of yourself that laughed more easily. And perhaps the hardest part is that nobody applauds invisible battles. People celebrate results. Very few notice endurance. They see the smile, not the tears you wiped away before leaving the house. They see the work you completed, not the anxiety you carried while doing it. They see that you kept going. They don't see how many times you almost couldn't. If that feels familiar, I want you to hear this carefully. Feeling exhausted does not mean you're weak. Sometimes, it's evidence that you've been strong for far too long, without giving yourself permission to rest. Think about a phone battery. Every day, you recharge it, not because the phone is broken, because energy runs out. Yet somehow, when our own emotional battery reaches 1%, we expect ourselves to keep performing, as if nothing is wrong. We judge ourselves for being tired. We call ourselves lazy. We compare ourselves to people whose stories we don't even know. But would you criticize a phone for needing to recharge? Of course not. Then why are you so harsh with yourself? Here's something most people never realize. Mental exhaustion doesn't steal your energy first. It steals your curiosity. You stop wondering. You stop dreaming. You stop noticing beautiful little moments. Instead of asking, "What could my future become?" you begin asking, "Can I just survive this week?" That's not because you've become negative. It's because your heart has been living in survival mode. And survival mode was never meant to become a lifestyle. It was only meant to help you through difficult seasons, not become your identity. Maybe today, you don't need another lecture. Maybe you don't need someone telling you to work harder. Maybe what you've needed all along is permission to admit, "I'm tired," not because you failed, but because you've been carrying far more than anyone realizes. And admitting that isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the first honest step toward healing. There's something I wish more people understood. The hardest battles are rarely the loud ones. Sometimes the deepest struggles happen in complete silence. No one sees them, no one hears them, and because they're invisible, people assume they don't exist. Maybe you've smiled through conversations while your mind was falling apart. Maybe you've celebrated other people's success while quietly wondering if your own life would ever feel lighter. Maybe you've kept saying, "I'm okay," because explaining how you really felt seemed impossible. Not everyone who is struggling looks broken. Some people look calm. Some people keep working. Some people continue taking care of everyone else, while forgetting how to take care of themselves. And that's the first realization. The people who look the strongest are often carrying the heaviest weight, not because life chose them, but because they've spent years believing they must never become a burden to anyone else. So they carry one more responsibility, one more disappointment, one more heartbreak, until one day, their heart quietly whispers, "I don't know how much longer I can keep carrying all of this." If you've ever felt that way, please don't judge yourself. You've been surviving for so long that survival has started to feel normal. But here's the second realization. You don't have to earn the right to rest. Think about how often we tell ourselves, "I'll rest after I finish this. I'll be happy after I solve that. I'll relax when life finally gets easier." But life keeps moving the finish line. There is always another responsibility, another bill, another expectation, another problem waiting around the corner. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment to breathe, you may spend your entire life holding your breath. Rest isn't something you earn. It's something you need. The same way flowers need rain. The same way trees need seasons. The same way the earth needs night before another sunrise. Nature never apologizes for resting. Yet somehow, we do. The third realization might surprise you. Healing rarely feels dramatic. Movies teach us that everything changes in one powerful moment. Real life is different. Healing often arrives so quietly that you almost miss it. One morning, you laugh without forcing it. One afternoon, you realize you haven't thought about yesterday's pain for an hour. One evening, you watch the sunset, and instead of feeling empty, you simply enjoy the colors. Those moments seem small, but they are not. They are proof that your heart is remembering how to breathe again. Don't ignore small victories, just because they don't look extraordinary. Mountains are climbed, one step at a time. Lives are rebuilt. The same way, here's the fourth realization. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that only knew how to survive. Many people remain trapped, not because they cannot heal, but because surviving has become familiar. Pain becomes routine. Stress becomes routine. Even unhappiness can become routine. And strangely, the familiar often feels safer than the unknown. But imagine spending your entire life inside a dark room. Eventually, your eyes adjust. You begin believing that darkness is normal, until one day, someone opens a window. At first, the light almost hurts. Not because light is bad, but because you've lived without it for so long. Maybe hope feels uncomfortable today. Maybe peace feels unfamiliar. That's okay. You don't have to rush. Just don't mistake familiarity for where you're meant to stay. And finally, the fifth realization. Your worth has never been measured by how much pain you can endure. Some people wear exhaustion like a medal. They believe suffering proves strength. It doesn't. Real strength isn't pretending nothing affects you. Real strength is having the courage to admit, I need a moment. I need help. I need rest. I need hope. There is nothing weak about those words. In fact, they often require more courage than silently falling apart. And maybe that's what you've needed to hear today. Not another reason to push yourself harder. Not another reminder to be stronger, but permission to be human. Before this message ends, I want to tell you something that I wish someone had told me years ago. One difficult season can quietly convince you that your whole life is falling apart. Pain has a strange way of shrinking our vision. When we're hurting, it's hard to imagine tomorrow feeling different. Our minds begin to believe this is how life will always be. But think back for a moment. There were days you believed you would never recover. Days when your heart was broken. Days when disappointment felt unbearable. Days when you thought, I don't know how I'll get through this. And yet, here you are. You survived days you once believed would destroy you. Not because you had all the answers. Not because you never cried. Not because you were fearless. But because, without even realizing it, you kept taking the next step. Sometimes, strength doesn't look like confidence. Sometimes, strength looks like getting out of bed when every part of you wanted to stay there. Sometimes, strength looks like making breakfast, even when your heart feels heavy. Sometimes, strength is answering one phone call, taking one walk, drinking one glass of water, or simply deciding, I'll try again tomorrow. Those moments may seem ordinary, but they're not. They are quiet victories, and quiet victories still change lives. You don't need to rebuild your whole life today. You don't need to solve every problem before sunset. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You only need enough courage for the next small step, because life isn't changed by one giant decision. It's changed by hundreds of ordinary moments that nobody applauds. A kind word, one healthy choice, one deep breath, one moment of forgiveness, one decision not to give up on yourself. Never underestimate how powerful small beginnings can become. A tiny seed doesn't become a tree overnight. It grows without making noise, without asking for attention, without comparing itself to the forest around it. Maybe that's exactly where you are today, growing in ways you cannot yet see. So please, don't compare your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. People show their highlights. Very few show their healing. Very few show the nights when they questioned everything. Very few show how many times they started over. Don't measure your journey against someone else's photograph. You don't know what happened outside the frame. And here's something beautiful. The person you're becoming is quietly being shaped, even on the days that feel completely ordinary. Even today, while listening to these words, something inside you may already be changing. Not because this video has magical answers. It doesn't. But sometimes, healing begins the moment we finally feel understood. Maybe that's all you've needed today. Not perfect advice. Not another motivational quote. Just the reminder that your feelings make sense. That your exhaustion has a reason. That your heart isn't failing. It's asking for kindness. So today, be a little gentler with yourself. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply love. Celebrate small progress. Forgive slow healing. Allow yourself to rest without feeling guilty. And remember this, your value has never depended on how productive you were, or how much you achieved, or how perfectly you held everything together. Your value was never something you had to earn. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with one final thought. A book isn't judged by its hardest chapter. It's remembered for how the story unfolds. Maybe this chapter has been painful. Maybe it's been exhausting. Maybe it's felt unbearably long. But chapters are not the whole story, and neither is this season of your life. There are conversations you haven't had yet, friendships you haven't discovered yet, moments of peace that haven't found you yet, reasons to smile that are already making their way toward you, even if you cannot see them today. So don't close the book because one chapter became difficult. Turn the page, slowly, patiently, hopefully, because your story is still being written. And I truly believe some of the most beautiful pages haven't been lived yet. If this message found you at the moment you needed it most, then carry just one sentence with you today. Being mentally exhausted doesn't mean you've reached the end. Sometimes it simply means it's finally time to be as kind to yourself as you've always been to everyone else. Take care of your heart. The world needs what only you can become. And until next time, keep moving forward, one peaceful step at a time.